Hi knitters, it's Mimi with Pastiche Knitwear, and today I'd like to show you how to knit English style. English style is where we're going to hold the yarn in the right hand and throw the yarn around the needle. It's referred to as throwing as opposed to picking, which is a continental style, which I will demo later in another video. So to begin, I'm going to put my needle into the first stitch. Let me stop though, and let's just take a look at what we're looking at as we get started. This first stitch, it's just a loop that's going around the needle, but I think of the stitch as having a front leg and a back leg. And that's important to kind of visualize. So I want to bring my needle in on the left-hand side of this front leg. I'm going to come with my needle in between. The right needle tip comes under the left needle tip. You can see that my needle tips are also, they have an X as I come into them. That's very important. It's going to make it so much easier to learn. The closer your needles get to parallel, the more difficult it's going to be for you to actually work a stitch. So always be looking for that X or cross when your needles come in. I'm going to take my right hand, I'm going to take my yarn tensioned in my right hand, and I'm going to bring it around the right hand needle tip from back to front. So the yarn is going to end up in between the two needle tips. Now I'm going to, I usually use my left index finger to help me do this. I'm going to push the right needle tip down until it just clears the left and it comes forward. It's coming back out on the left hand side, right where we went in. And now I'm going to pull the stitch off onto my right hand needle. Let's do it again. I'm going to take my right needle tip in to the left of the stitch in between the two legs. I want to maintain this cross. I'm going to bring my yarn around from back to front. It's a counterclockwise action. The yarn comes down in between the two needles. And you should feel a little click of that yarn as it settles in between those two needles. Now there are two ways really to think about this next action. The first one that I had shown you was where you kind of push this the right needle tip down till it just clears the left. Bring the right needle tip forward on the left-hand side of that strand. So you're coming out the same door you went in and then pulling that off. Another way to think about it though is that you're going to lift this strand up and over the tip of the right-hand needle. It's the same action. Sometimes it just makes more sense that way though. Lift it over the top and then you pull that stitch off onto the right-hand needle. Come into the stitch from the left-hand side, in between the two legs. Yarn comes around from back to front in between. The right needle tip comes down. This strand comes over the tip of the right-hand needle and off. Now, let me just do a little demo here. I'm going to bring my yarn around, but I'm going to let my needle tips go closer to parallel. And I'm going to show you how difficult this becomes. Okay, I'm trying now to finish this stitch. And I can come under this way, but it's not as easy to do. If I maintain this cross, this X, it is so much easier to do. Now, tensioning the yarn is probably the thing that's going to take you the most time to get accustomed to or used to. Everybody's tensioning is different. I will show you what I do, but that does not necessarily mean that's what's going to feel comfortable for you. I find that for me, I take the yarn, I put all 4 fingers around my yarn and hold this way. I then extend my index finger, keeping these fingers loosely coiled, so I do have some tension down here. And then I rotate my hand, so I'm holding on the right hand needle with my thumb and my middle finger while my index finger is relaxed, just kind of pointing. I don't have a lot of tension on it. So I bring this around and off. So for me, I do let go when I'm throwing. I'm holding on completely here with my thumb and index finger right underneath where the action is. Now, one thing I want to encourage you is sometimes I'll see students who are kind of covering up their work, and that's a little problematic because you can't really see what you're doing. So you'd want your thumb and index finger just underneath where the action is here. Just throw the yarn, let go, and then hold on again as you finish the stitch. So you are alternating holding on and letting go. It's a little bit like tapping your head and rubbing your tummy a little bit. It can feel really awkward to get started. But you'll find a rhythm that works for you. So we come in on the left-hand side of the stitch, underneath, yarn comes around, and this stitch comes over the top and off. There is a little rhyme that I teach children, which is great because it talks about all 4 elements of what we're doing. So it goes like this: under the fence, catch the sheep, back we come, and off we leap. Under the fence, catch the sheep, back we come, and off we leap. Now we have knitted our whole row of stitches. Let's look at what happens when we turn the work around to continue knitting. Now, one of the things you're going to notice is that a lot of times this first stitch is very big and loopy. And a lot of times students like to compensate for that because everything else looks pretty neat, but this guy looks real big. So I've seen students come like this and pull the yarn over. The problem with that is that this stitch right here, this actually is the previous row, and I don't want to knit into that. When I start again, I want to make sure I'm just coming up into the stitch that's on the needle, not anything that's underneath it. So if you'll just pull down on that a little bit, you'll see this whole line of little bumps at the base. These are purl stitches. We're not going to get into that. We're not going to get into that too much right now. But you can see that if I pull down on this, that this looks like these, it's just larger. All of that will take care of itself as you knit. You don't have to worry about that, and you haven't done anything wrong. It's just the nature of the beast. So let's do another row, or at least let's get started. So once again, I'm going to take my working needle in on the left-hand side of that stitch. Right needle tip comes under the left. I'm going to maintain my X, tension my yarn, bring the yarn around counterclockwise. I like to push down till that left needle tip just clears, and then we pull it off. Here's another thing. If your stitches are really stretched out along your left-hand needle, you're going to find it hard when it comes to pull the stitches off because you have so much tension. It's kind of like playing tug of war. And so when you're coming to pull, it's sort of fighting you, and you can't kind of get it. So I really encourage you to crowd your stitches toward the tip of your needle, and the more you knit, we're going to be knitting the stitches off the left-hand needle onto the right-hand needle. You are going to have to be scooting them as you go. So we're going to come under the fence, catch the sheep, back we come, and off we leap. Under the fence, catch the sheep, back we come, and off we leap. You need to be patient with yourself. You need to give yourself time. There are lots of elements that are going on here, so don't get in a hurry. Remember to maintain your X. That will help tremendously. Also, consider doing a little assist with that left index finger to just guide. I find that that is how I do it, but there are many other ways to do it. The fact that if you sit around a table with 10 knitters, you'll see 10 different ways of doing it. So it's not as though my way is the only way to do it. These are the basic steps of knitting, and I want to encourage you to start the journey. It's just such a fun one. If you have any questions or you're confused or need a hand, just shout out to me. I'd be happy to help. Happy knitting.